You know, we love talking about mindset on the Money and You show. What is your mindset around money? How do you use your mindset to either help you, well, hopefully you're using it to help you, or how might it be sabotaging you? If you don't really know the answer to that, you're going to learn a lot today on today's Money and You show. Your relationship with money matters. I'm Michelle Perkins, and this is the Money and You podcast, where I will be breaking down your relationship with money, offering tough love money tips, and a money dating plan that will focus on lifting the barriers to success to help pave the way for better money practices and increased wealth. It's time to take control to live a limit-free life. It starts today. Hello, and welcome to the Money and You show. I'm Michelle Perkins, your host, and I have a very wonderful show for you today. This is a show after my own heart with a woman who I think I'm very aligned with in terms of how we approach financial matters. She is a mindset expert as well as a money management expert, and so we're going to get into a deep conversation here about your mindset and how you use it and what it needs in addition to just a great mindset for you to manage your money really well. So I'm going to bring Amy Westbrook in, and I'm going to tell you a little about her first. Amy Westbrook is changing the way people think about money and their approach to building wealth. She's on a mission to help professionals and growth-minded business owners raise the bar on their financial potential versus struggling with the mainstream shrink your way to wealth advice. As a professional wealth coach and founder of The Capital Life, Amy empowers financial freedom seekers to confidently earn, manage, and grow their wealth to new levels. She'll help you discover your money blind spots, fast-track your success, and manifest greater time, energy, and money without sacrificing yourself in the process. Start now to elevate your influence and financial legacy. Amy, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here today.
I'm so excited to have you. When we spoke, I realized how aligned we are in our thinking about money, which got me really excited. So I'm really looking forward to today's conversation.
Me as well.
I think it's always important to remind people, you know, whether you've heard about money mindset, even if you've done a lot of work around money mindset, it's the kind of thing that you need to be thinking about and incorporating these ideas every day. I'm not exactly sure why that is, but it's a practice like anything else, and you need to really incorporate that into your whole financial life, your financial planning, everything. So if you would, tell us how you got into this whole topic.
Okay. Well, I started out in a corporate career like a lot of people that I'm sure are listening. But I realized as I went along and more, it just wasn't a good fit, especially after I had started a family and I was traveling all the time. And, it just really came to a head that I wasn't doing the right thing. And I talked with someone that I worked with, and she said, I just happen to be working with a life coach right now. I think you should consider talking to her. And so I started working with her. And what came out of that is I absolutely love to coach people. I love to mentor people. And so I decided, gosh, if I'm really not going to live my life with regrets, I guess I need to get my coaching certification. And so that's what I did. And actually, right as I was finishing up my coaching certification, they were shutting down my division for the company that I worked for. So it was really perfect timing, if you will. Mm-hmm. And as much as I enjoyed the coaching, I really enjoyed the one-on-one coaching. That was a lot of fun. But I just was sort of hearkening back to my times when I was in my corporate career, and I was a mentor for women and men actually, who would call me and say, gosh, can you explain how the 401k works? How much house can I afford? How, can I afford to buy this car right now? I just really enjoyed money conversations. Mm-hmm. And I enjoyed, doing my own money as well. I invest and do everything on my own. And so it was just sort of perfect timing again, if you will. And the minute I decided that I was going to incorporate the money coaching with my life coaching, lo and behold, the next week, somebody that I went through training with called me and said, hey, guess what? Capital One is looking for a money coach that's also a certified life coach. Are you interested? So I became one of the founding members of the Capital One money coaching team. And it's really just been my story ever since.
I love that. That is amazing. And I love that you pursued what you were excited about, what felt motivating at the time, what aligned with your values. It's so important to find that. And that you had the corporate background. I mean, I have that too, so I'm probably biased, but I think that's a great background to have, to learn as much as you can from that experience and then take it with you into your...
Absolutely. I mean, I had some really good mentors in my corporate career. So I was very lucky, a lot of the experiences and even like some of the difficulties that I came across. It really taught me a lot in a lot of ways. When we have those adversities, it shows us if we're unhappy, you have to kind of look at that. Well, why am I unhappy?
Right.
And so it wasn't until I really started looking at my own values and realized, I wasn't really living totally true to those values. And that's why I felt this just unsettled feeling. I just knew there was something more for me, which was interesting because I was very successful. The awards that I had won, I mean, I'd been number one in the country before. So I had been successful, but I didn't feel successful. And I don't know if you've ever felt that way where sometimes, how you look and how you feel just aren't in alignment. And that was me.
Yeah, I think that was me too. I had 15 years in a corporate career, and the whole time it was kind of like, doing well and moving up while, thinking constantly about what is a better fit. I know this isn't the right place to be, but I don't know what is, so it's interesting. And when you have that feeling, if you pay any attention to your own self and your intuition,
Right. Well, and, I don't want people listening thinking that, I had it all figured out either. So I went into coaching training, and that's when we started working on, what is your purpose? What are your values? How do you know when you're in alignment? And the words like alignment and resonating with values and, resonance. I don't even know what that means. Like that was a foreign language for me. I was in a more like a medical career and, I was science-based. And so people were using these words I didn't even understand. So I would love to say that this was part of some master plan and I knew exactly what I wanted to do. But I wasn't that clever. It took me a while to figure it out.
Yeah, but I love that. I love that you said that because I remember too, when you start doing personal development work, and I came from an accounting finance kind of, background. And it's all this new world, new language, new way of thinking, new perspectives on everything. And it's kind of fascinating. So
right.
It is.
Well, and you combine that with entrepreneur. Yeah. And all of a sudden somebody's not telling you how to spend your time during the day and you have to figure that out. Yeah. I mean, it's a whole new world.
Yeah. That's a whole show in itself.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, people think, oh my gosh, to have my time to myself. I mean, I thought this, to have, no structure and no bosses, and man, it's difficult, more difficult than you think.
It is, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, well, so back to money. So what were you finding when? It's kind of interesting because when you went into life coaching, I mean, were you hoping to talk about money or were you hoping to talk about, other aspects of life, or had you not really thought about that?
That's actually a really good question because I think what I found was when I was life coaching, so many people, were talking about their purpose and what they love and, what's just going to make their life worth living. And then there was always a comma. And then they said, but I could never afford to do that. Yeah. It was always a money problem getting in the way. And I just thought to myself, I know how to solve these problems. In my traditional coaching training, they teach you're not really there to give advice. This isn't consulting. This is coaching. So for me, I had to learn how to basically sort of create a new arm of my coaching practice, if you will, where I was both coaching and consulting in a way where I was, finally stepping in and saying, well, if you can't afford to do that, let's talk about it. Let's talk about what's getting in the way and let's put together a strategy. Because sometimes it was just strategy.
Right.
And then sometimes it's, what we talked about before is more that mindset.
Yeah.
They were getting in their own way. So it really just allowed me to approach the issues from multiple different directions.
Yeah, I love that. I found, I needed to do that too. I mean, I came from a consulting background. So initially I wanted to just release that because I'd found in consulting, you tell everybody what to do and then they don't do it. So then, I found coaching. It's like, wow, they come up with this stuff themselves and then they do it. But I think that mix is what works, honestly. And to that point, you and I talked about that mix of mindset and taking action. I mean, you have to actually, you have to have this great mindset around money, but you have to do things as well. And so do you want to just speak to that a bit?
Well, I just want to say, for a lot of people out there that have tried to keep a budget, they've tried to do the things, they've watched, I don't know, people on TV or YouTube, wherever, they're talking about what you're supposed to be doing with your money and you just can't seem to do it. You can't seem to be consistent or you just, can't take any action at all. I would just say that's very normal. And that's really where sort of the self-mastery comes in first. I mean, you have to really develop that muscle of what your thinking is. And, is it courageous thinking? Do you trust your thoughts? Are you willing to take action? Are you okay if you make a mistake? And I think most people are not there yet. And because of that, that's what keeps them from taking action. And if you think about it, I mean, I read, depending on the study, anywhere from, say 65 to 75% of people don't keep budgets. And so if somebody calls me and says, hey, I need help, and I just, tell them, well, you need to keep a budget, I'm really not serving that person. What's getting in the way of wanting to keep a budget? And so it's really understanding somebody's unique situation and why they think the way they think about money, about building wealth, about tracking their expenses or not tracking their expenses, and just sort of figuring out, what makes somebody tick around their money to then give them strategies. I just think we've got to lose this one size fits all advice around money because, I mean, we see it's not working.
Right. Right. I agree. And I think everybody wants that for everything, a one size fits all for losing weight, for, money, for everything. And it's just never going to be that.
I want that. I mean, I want it, but unfortunately, I don't think it exists, but there's definitely a way to make it palatable for you. I mean, if somebody told you to go on a vegan diet and you're like, well, I don't really like vegetables, that's probably not going to work for you, right? So it's just finding out really what's going to align with your values and how you think and, your own personal, the way you want to handle your money.
Yeah. And of course, the way you think and the way you feel, that's going to dictate everything. That's what I didn't know when I was a financial professional, is that you're not going to make, I mean, at work, I could do it for the people I was working for because I was emotionally not, invested. But when it comes to yourself, your emotions are going to drive things. And so what have you found with your, in your work, it's coming up for people emotionally, psychologically, that keeps them from getting where they want to go with money?
Right. And I think, again, people fall on a continuum. Some people have a pretty good awareness that their thoughts are getting in their own way. And then there's some people that is sort of a new thought for them, that, they believe that they just need to use willpower and work harder to keep a budget. They don't really realize that their thoughts are getting in their own way. But, what I would tell people is we all have experiences around money. We had them with our parents. I know you've had many guests on the show that have talked about this, and how, our childhood really lays the groundwork. It plants the seed for what we think about money. Our culture plants the seed for how we think about money and wealth and wealthy people. But just keep in mind, every time you have a money interaction, we typically assign meaning to it. Meaning, I did a good job with that. I made a good decision, or like, gosh, I really blew it. That was stupid. See, my dad was right. I suck at math. I suck at money. I'm a slow learner. I mean, we have these things that we tell ourselves, and it actually goes so much deeper than just mindset. If we all just needed a positive mindset, or, we could write out some positive affirmations. If that's all it took, we would all be millionaires.
Yeah. And that's where it gets complicated.
It does.
Because when we talk about a positive mindset, people tend to think, well, I will write affirmations and I will just visualize myself making tons of money. How do we go deeper with,
Right. Well, and, I don't want to say that affirmations are bad. Affirmations absolutely have their place, like time and place. But if you're writing, I have a millionaire mindset, your mind is actually going, that's not true. I see your bank account, and that's actually, you don't have $1 million. How do you have a millionaire mindset? And so it feels incongruent with your brain. And so your brain's like sort of like the truth teller, if you will.
Yeah.
And so I think, the deeper thing is to look at, what is your mindset, but what is the belief that's causing that mindset? And we all have beliefs. And, some people see them as truths. And if you're willing to be open and examine your thoughts and understand that, maybe there's a room for improvement, I guess is a way to put it, or room to change your thoughts. That sort of opens the door, because your limiting beliefs are also born from what I think is even like a deeper layer, which is your identity. And our identity, we have occupational identities. I'm a coach. I am a spouse. I'm a sister. We have those types of identities, but we also assign emotions as identities. And, a lot of people are not very kind to themselves when it comes to these identities. Gosh, I'm stupid. I am a slow learner, kind of like what we talked about before. And what that does is, when you tell yourself, well, I'm just the person, that's just my identity. People like us don't have these opportunities. People like us don't belong in these positions. People like us, will never be living in these neighborhoods. The identity really becomes an excuse. And I like to think of it sort of like a box of what's possible. So it tells you how much money you can make. It tells you where you can work. It can tell, the kind of person that you would date. And so when we wonder why we've written out these affirmations, we're pretty darn positive. I mean, why do we still make like the same amount every single year? Why do we still date the same kind of people? And I think it just boils down to the fact that we have these identities that are at our very core defining what's possible for us.
Yeah, I think it's great to attach that word to things. That's something I feel like people can grasp a little bit better. Because we're, identity is something we're familiar with. And so when we start realizing how we identify ourselves with money, I think that's a really important distinction. So, yeah.
Well, and our identities can show up. I mean, if we lack worth, it absolutely impacts our bottom line or the kind of job that we have or how much we have in an account. It affects our friendships, the people that we date, what we think we're worthy of. So it's just so interesting. It just shows that it's not just about money. It's really affects so many areas of our lives.
Right. As does money. I mean, money, if you start with that as kind of the foundation, not that it's the most important thing, but it does tend to, either make parts of your life better or make them worse, and so, I think it's really crucial to understand and work on that identity. I think that was the most interesting thing about coaching, was to find that all of these things that you think are sort of set in stone, it can be worked on. Like, they don't have to be what they are, whether it's your thoughts or, anything. So
absolutely. Well, just even realizing that voice in your head, that voice that basically is with you 24/7 is not you.
Right.
It's really not you. Because if you listen to that voice, you will be stuck into your circumstances that it won't change. And just realizing that, that's just one voice that you can listen to, but you have agency over your mind. And when you realize that and you realize you can change your thoughts, that's why you ask, what's the most important thing is, just having awareness. Gosh, if I keep that thought, is that helping me or hurting me? Is that going to get me closer to my goals or further away from my goals?
Right.
If it's further away, well, maybe I need a new thought. I'm not saying that, you have to completely start over and become this wholly new person all at once, but you can begin to just say, listen, just today,
Yeah.
I'm not going to listen to that negative Nelly in my head. And just for today, I'm going to notice that thought, but I'm not going to let it dictate my action.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. And I remember years ago, it was somebody famous that I can't remember, who it was, but basically just boiled it down to, if you're feeling crappy, it's probably because you're having some crappy thoughts. If you're feeling good, it's probably because you're having good thoughts. So, just check in with your feelings and change your thoughts based on that.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting to talk about, and I think we might not associate that with money as much as with relationships or with other things, but it holds true for money. And because you have a relationship with money, I think of money. I just plot money into the same category as other relationships. I think you should sort of work it the same way. But
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Well, I'll just say that, for me, when I work with people, I always want to talk about holistic wealth, because wealth is not just the money that you have in a bank account. It's also, having great relationships with friends or maybe a spouse. It's having fun, right? It's having the ability to have fun. So wealth comes in so many different ways, paths to you. And it was interesting. I'm kind of a nerd. If people haven't caught on yet, I am. But, the origin of the word wealth was actually, it meant wholeness, to be whole. And so I think over time, we've taken that away. And so we've just assigned money to the word wealth now. And so I want people to really get back to feeling whole again. I really think that's what true wealth is all about.
Wow, that is super interesting. I love that. I could go into so many stories right now. I was just in Yosemite last week, and we have friends there who, are just so into nature and just to kind of that lifestyle, and really don't have a whole lot of money, but I would say are some of the wealthiest people I know. Absolutely, wonderful families, enjoying life and doing meaningful work. It just isn't about amassing a lot of money, but they have true wealth, and so what you just said is really interesting.
Yeah.
And it's such a personal thing. I mean,
It
success, wealth, there is only your own definition for that. There's no, out there definition.
Yeah. And I think that, there's building wealth. I mean, if you can, stack your $1 bills on top of each other, you're building wealth. But then there's also experiencing wealth. And I would say that I work with a lot of people that were like me. They make good money, but they're not happy.
Right.
And so are they building wealth? Yes. Are they experiencing wealth? No. And so they're not like your friends. They don't have the ability. It doesn't matter what's in their bank account. Like, they'll never be happy.
Right.
So, I mean, I think that's important. And I think that sort of speaks to the fact that really money does need to be tailored to individual people. I mean, I would never tell somebody how to spend their money. If you want to buy purses, if you want to buy lattes, go for it. If you can afford it, and we can work it into a spending plan, fantastic. Spend it on whatever makes you happy. Maybe those aren't things that I would buy, but I think we need to maybe just start taking what people tell us in like the mainstream media with a grain of salt. Say, wait a minute, what's important to me? What makes me happy? And if your morning ritual is around a latte and like the froth with a little bit of cinnamon makes your day, go for it.
I couldn't agree more. And that whole don't drink by the lattes is part of that effort to make everybody be able to follow a program. So they threw that out there because a lot of people were spending money on lattes. But I couldn't agree with you more. I think we all spend money on a lot of things we don't actually care about that much. And so
This is true.
if we just, pare that down, then that would be a huge help.
Yeah.
This is great. I love this conversation. I love even what you said about just it's fun to have conversations about money. And that's another thing that was so taboo for so long and really still is. But people like, you and hopefully me a little bit are trying to encourage people to have these conversations. It's liberating. It takes some of that, uncomfortableness away around. And we realize, you can talk about money like you can talk about anything else in life that we talk about. It's kind of weird that we have this thing where we're not supposed to talk about it.
Well, it's so taboo. When, and I think that's really Brene Brown. I'll give her credit for that is, when you have shame around something, keeping it hidden under the rock, that really doesn't help you shift your shame.
Right.
It's not until you're willing to talk about it. And what's hilarious is you start talking about it and you realize, 4 of your best friends also are going through the same thing. And you're like, oh my gosh, we're all doing this. But, I really think this is where women are disadvantaged because men will often talk about money. They will talk about investing. And women don't typically do that. We might talk about our kids, our spouses. And by not talking about that, unfortunately, we don't know what the going rate is for a job.
Right.
That makes us often much less likely to negotiate for raises. And so sometimes you need to have those conversations just to understand, sort of put your worth in perspective and gosh, man, I could really do that job. I would be good at that. Man, I should be making more money. So, I really wish that women would have more of these conversations because I think not having it, and, maybe it's kind of weird or uncomfortable, but, next dinner club, book club, whatever, maybe try bringing up the topic.
Yeah, I know. And I think that's great. And I know, there are authors out there who have written their books with the idea that, okay, now take the book and use it as a basis to have these group discussions or whatever. But it's ingrained in us, I think, still to not share, certain things. And a lot of it's the whole comparison thing, and like you said, you feel shame because you don't feel like you measure up to whoever. And the more you talk about it, the more you realize you do. So there is a lot of benefit to that.
Right. Well, and I was saying, unfortunately, what we are comparing ourselves to is what we think is reality, and that's social media.
Yeah.
And seeing somebody's vacation, seeing somebody's car, seeing somebody's home. I mean, no one's going to really put a picture up with their house looking like a disaster, rooms that are half painted. We don't usually do that part of it. And so we just have this idea that other people have it more together than us. Other people are doing better than us. And, when I was coaching at Capital One, I never knew what was going to come through the door. I mean, anybody could schedule an appointment. And what I found was kind of a theme is, gosh, what am I doing wrong? I'm working really hard to save. I'm working hard to put money towards this. But my friends still seem to have all this money left over and they go on all these great vacations. And I was just like, you don't know what their credit card debt looks like. You don't know what their retirement savings looks like. They may have no dollars that they're putting towards retirement right now. So you cannot compare yourself. And that's why, it's so funny because, people will come in, they're like, I need a budget. I'm like, well, time out, slow your roll. Let's look at your values first, because we can't put together a budget or a spending plan. I prefer to do spending plans. We can't put that together if we don't know what's important to you, because we need to know where to put your money. If travel's a big thing for you and you want to make it a priority, let's do it. You may have to look at other areas where you cut back a little bit, maybe not. But we'll need to look at it, but it all really starts from your values.
Yep. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And isn't it interesting how people just want to jump in? I find that with career transition too, people, will either lose a job or want to leave their job. And the first thing they say is, I need a new resume. But they haven't thought through where they even want to go. So how would you possibly write a great resume? So kind of the same thing. How do you do a budget when you don't know your goals? And so all of this is a process. And I think people sometimes are reluctant to do that background work, and that's really what's going to pay off. And so working with somebody like you to figure those things out, that's where you're going. I mean, you can do a lot of things and take a lot of actions and just miss the mark, still not reach the goals because you haven't really set them. It's interesting to me too. People tackle sort of micro areas of their money, pay off debt or whatever, but they don't as often have an overall plan. Is that what you find?
Absolutely. And I think, that really is what made people very unsettled during COVID, is they realized they didn't have a plan. And when you have a plan, you have I'm going to say a general idea even of where your money is going. I work a lot with people that don't want to keep a zero-based budget. So it's like, okay, how do we generally figure out where your money is going? What do you generally want your money to do? But when you have some strategies for the short term, but you have that long-term vision of the life that you want your money to create for you, that provides peace of mind. And so not having a plan, and again, people are a little impatient. It's like, well, I just need a budget. I just need, just give me this. And I'm like, I can give it to you, but if I call you in 30 days, are you going to keep doing that? Mm-hmm. Probably not. Because if you couldn't do it before, just having like a different spreadsheet isn't going to change your thinking about it. Yeah. Like, you're probably not going to be consistent with it. And so that's why I want to say harp, but I strongly urge people to do the personal development work, the self-mastery work. Because if you think about it, the person that you think about that's been very successful, chances are it's not just a strategy. It's not just a spreadsheet. They're courageous, they're charismatic, they know who they are, they know what their strengths are, they understand the value of those strengths, they know how to manage their time, money, and energy. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of things that really go into the runway, if you will, to build wealth. And so I think ultimately to be successful, you're really shortchanging yourself if you're really just trying to start at the end of the runway. Because chances are, you may be like me. I started my corporate career and I was moving up the ladder really fast. And I always joke with people that I climbed the success ladder and then I got to the top and I'm like, darn, I'm at the top of the wrong house. I was great. Like, I should have put more thought into what was in alignment with me. And so, it's tempting to want to sprint. And I get it too. Who doesn't want to feel ease? Mm-hmm. Who doesn't want to feel secure around their money or, just having a lot of extra money? That's great. But to be in that position and to make sure that you stay in that position, I really do believe it requires that personal development. And you even said at the top of the show, even when you grow and you make more money, like there's a discomfort that happens. And I had a mentor that used to always say, new level, new devil.
New devil. My mentor too. I'll talk about that. Maybe say mentor.
And I just, you wonder why, like, I've done the personal development work. Yeah. this was me. I was like, I've done it. And then you start to get to like a new level and you're like, oh, why am I bumping up against this resistance again? Like I've done the work. Like, when does it get easy? Yeah. I don't know that it ever gets easy, but I just tell people to invite that resistance. That means you're growing. Mm-hmm. Good job. Yay, you. But just get curious about the resistance because it's poking you for a reason. Figure out what it's trying to tell you. Yeah. It could be a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I love that you said that because once you've been doing this long enough, you realize that you recognize the feeling of resistance when it comes, and it's no longer this giant, hurdle that you've got to figure out and get past because you do know it's going to come knocking on your door over and over again. So, it's, I love that you said that. Yeah, there is no there when it comes to personal development.
Right.
It's and for that I like that about it because it's a lifelong learning kind of thing.
Me too. If I'm not growing, if I'm
Yeah.
not feeling that resistance and growth, that means I'm probably dead. So
Yeah.
that's a bad sign. That's not good.
Or super tired. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
I want to, of course, this conversation is so much fun that it's going fast. So I want to make sure, because we talked about, both mindset and self-mastery. There were a couple of things you mentioned I wanted to see if you would clarify. The zero-based budgeting, I'm not sure everybody might know what that is. Okay. And then just a little more on the self-mastery and, how that influences your mindset too.
Right. Okay, absolutely. Well, the zero-based budget is when someone gives every penny a job. So you know where every single dime is going. And so a lot of people will keep a zero-based budget, sometimes because they have to. I mean, if you really don't have that much discretionary income, you really need to keep an eye on where it's going because you have to make it last to the end of the month.
Right.
And so for some people that are living paycheck to paycheck, they are really vigilant about where those pennies go and they're keeping a zero-based budget. Now, some people, they'll say, well, I'm living paycheck to paycheck as well. I don't know if they always need to keep a zero-based budget. Sometimes they just need to be more intentional and put that money towards things that they really enjoy. The spending's gotten out of hand. Mm-hmm. And to give you an example, I mean, I've coached people. I remember one couple who had, I think they were making around $37,000 a month. And most people think, oh my gosh, if I had that kind of money, like all my problems would be solved. But unfortunately, they'd experienced lifestyle creep. Yeah. And so their expenses had just gone way up. Every time, they started making more, they started spending more, and so much of their money was committed to other stuff. So that on top of unmonitored discretionary spending, their spending just got out of control.
Right.
And so, for them, it was very easy to get back on track. It was very easy to pay off the credit cards because they had that extra discretionary income. But for anyone that wants to try it, there's a lot of apps out there, and all you have to do is Google zero-based budget. It's sort of like tracking your calories for a week or two. It gives you a real awareness of where your money's going. You're like, I mean, I remember one couple that told me, like, we should not be broke. Like, we make a lot of money. And so I had them track their expenses, and sure enough, they were spending $2,500 a month just on eating out. Mm-hmm. And they were spending anywhere from $1,500 a month to $2,000 a month on groceries. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, well, do you eat those groceries? And she said, no, just throw them out.
Yeah.
Because, they were always eating out. So it just really was a very high level of unconsciousness around their money.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, what was the second question that you asked?
The second question, thank you for that. That was a great answer. But just kind of the self-mastery piece. I just want people to understand a little more about what that means when it comes to money.
Okay. Well, and let me start. I'm going to give you the layers of a cake, if you will. If you want to build your money cake, think of it like this. The base layer, it is that identity and what you think is possible for you, for wealth, for your job, for your income, for your savings, for your retirement. We all have this identity of what's possible. That then feeds into and informs our limiting beliefs. So what are your beliefs? And then your beliefs really create that story. And that's where your mindset comes to play. Like, what is your state for the day? Are you positive? Are you negative? Are you in a bad mood? We kind of talked about that a little bit. If you're in a bad mood, maybe start to get curious about that and sort of work backwards and figure out what your beliefs are around that. And maybe is that tied to your identity? But we also then, all of those things ultimately feed into our thoughts, feed into our actions. And so there's what we're doing, not doing well, not doing consistently. And our actions are what create our results. So I tell people, if you don't like your bank account, if you don't like your job, if there's something in your life that you're not getting the result that you want, work backwards through what I just did. Are you taking the right actions to create that result? Maybe not. And if you're not taking the right actions or the consistent actions, what are the thoughts that are getting in the way? And a lot of people can relate to that because they're like, yeah, I procrastinate, or I'm a perfectionist and I perfect to the point that, like, entrepreneurs, they never launch their product.
Right.
Or they're just stuck. A lot of people just get stuck. And when they tell me that, what I realize is they're more stuck in the thinking. It's really not stuck in the doing. Yeah. People can do stuff. It might not be the right stuff, but they're busy. And so that's really the hierarchy of how thoughts control our results. And if you don't like your results, just start to work backwards.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. I love that. Yeah. I hope people will go back and re-listen to that and take some notes, because you can actually go into each of those areas, and it's very revealing. So,
yeah. Well, and we're stuck in a doing society. So for most of us, we think it's an action step. And so we might hire a coach that is going to teach us how to do YouTube videos, or we're going to hire a coach that teaches us how to write a book and use that. Or we go and we spend a lot of money on a certification, or we tell ourselves, I really should get that master's degree. And so we're just looking at changing the doing. And like you said, if people can just go back, re-listen to that, and just start to think, wait a minute, what's my thinking, my interpretation of that thinking that's setting the stage? If I can shift that, I can do anything I put my mind to.
Yeah. And building things from a foundation up, I think that it sounds a little boring to people. It sounds kind of like nobody really wants to do it. They want to jump. But I love what you're saying, because people do that with money too. It's like, I just want to start investing, but they don't have an emergency fund. They still have a lot of debt. There are a lot of things that aren't as exciting as, some of the other things. But to get those down, that I think has a huge impact on your identity too. When you're walking around knowing, I've tackled my debt, I have a fund, it does. And this is what I like about the mindset and kind of the action taking working together, because your mindset will get you to take the actions if it's in a good place, but those actions will also reinforce this better mindset that, I do what I say I'm going to do, or I have made progress here. Then that brain that you were talking about that didn't believe you earlier starts believing you. So it's kind of cool.
And I feel like it's like a muscle. So I understand. I mean, I hear that. Well, it's kind of slow. I just want to jump in. I get it. I want to go from 0 to 1,000 also. Like, I do. But if we just understand, if we're willing to put in that time and effort up front, and I'll just, call it a big category of personal development, it can kind of feel hard at first, but it gets easier. Like the first time you start going through things and you're trying to figure out how to notice or pay attention to that feeling in your gut and why it doesn't feel good. That's sort of new, and it's a little bit harder in the beginning. But, once you sort of get a system for it is maybe the best way to say it. It just happens faster and faster and faster. And so it's like a muscle. You just need to start working it out. Yeah,
that's a great way to wrap up. And as soon as you said system, that's a huge part of the self-mastery, is if you can get some systems in place.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Wow. Amy, thank you so much. This has been so good. I could continue talking for another hour, but let people know how they can contact you, work with you, get more information.
Absolutely. So they can visit any of my social media handles, which are listed below here at Live the Capital Life. That'll take you to my website, which is amywestbrook.com. And I'm happy to schedule an appointment with people and see if this is something that they're ready to tackle, to take on, to really finally feel different about their money. And I start with people with a program called the Aligned Wealth Blueprint. And it's really finding alignment in your brain around money and around wealth and aligning that with the future that you want to create for yourself. So becoming that person that wants to be wealthy.
I love that. And again, whatever that means for you. So that is amazing. And yeah, I would encourage people to get in touch with Amy. I love that you have the money background and the life coaching background. I think that's a great combination to help people on a deeper level. So thank you so much for joining me today. This has been great. And yeah, really, really enjoyed this conversation. So I appreciate your time and you coming on the show with me today. So
thank you. I appreciate what you do.
Thank you. I appreciate what you do. I think we're aligned. So that's
yeah,
great.
Amen.
All right. Well, thank you. And thank you, listeners, for being here. We're broadcast every Monday from ubngo.com in Burbank, California. Super excited to bring the show to all the podcast platforms, to Roku, to the Limit Free Life YouTube channel. So you can find us all over the place. Connect with me, Michelle, at limitfreelife.com, and you can sign up for my blog and learn about upcoming events. If you like the show, please share it with your friends. Give us a like, a review, and we'd love to get the show out there more so we can have more great guests like Amy talking about money and helping you learn and you to be wealthy. So thanks again. We'll see you next week.